Thinking about a NAS for your office or your growing media library? Who is this actually good for, who should skip it, and is it worth the price for normal everyday buyers? Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. I get a lot of questions from people who have outgrown a single external drive but aren't ready to dive into a full-blown server farm. The biggest hesitation I hear is, what if I spend a lot of money and end up with a box that I can't actually use the way I need? That fear is real, especially when you're looking at a device that promises enterprise-grade specs but still requires you to source your own hard drives and do the initial install yourself. With the Synology DiskStatoin DS1621 Plus, the trade-off sits squarely on that line between power and DIY effort. First off, the DS1621 Plus is built around a Ryzen V1500B quad-core processor clocked at 2.2 GHz. In everyday terms, that means the unit can juggle several tasks at once, running file shares, handling backups, and even serving a small virtual machine without the lag you sometimes see on cheaper ARM-based NAS boxes. The 32 GB of DDR4 memory, which you can upgrade further if you ever need more, gives it a lot of headroom for memory-intensive apps like Surveillance Station or Docker containers. If your workflow includes video editing drafts, large Photoshop files, or multiple users pulling 4K footage simultaneously, you'll notice the difference compared to a 2-bay model that stalls when two people stream from it at the same time. Now, let's talk storage capacity. The chassis holds 6 3.5-inch drives, and Synology advertises a maximum raw capacity of 60 terabytes. That's a solid figure for a small business that needs to store client projects, backup servers, and maybe a bit of archival footage. Because the drives aren't pre-installed, you have the freedom to pick exactly the mix you want: high-capacity 10 terabytes drives for bulk storage and a few 4 terabytes SSDs for cache if you decide to add a cache tier later. The downside? You have to buy and install those drives yourself. For people who expected a plug-and-play experience straight out of the box, that extra step can feel like a hidden cost. You'll need a screwdriver, a spare SATA cable, and a bit of patience to mount the bays correctly. One practical strength that shows up in real-world use is the dual 1 GBE LAN ports. Most small offices run a gigabit network, and having two ports lets you set up link aggregation for a little extra bandwidth and redundancy. I've seen teams of 3 to 5 editors pull a combined 800 megabits per second of data without hitting a bottleneck, which is impressive for a 1 GBE only box. If you need more than that, say a 10 GBE backbone for heavy post-production work, you'll have to add a separate network card, which Synology does not include. That's a clear trade-off. The unit is affordable for its class, but it won't replace a dedicated 10 GBE server if that's a must-have. The operating system, Synology's DiskStatoin Manager, DSM, is where the product really earns its keep. DSM is a web-based interface that feels more like a consumer cloud service than a traditional server UI. Setting up shared folders, user permissions, and automated backup jobs takes just a few clicks. The Quick Connect feature lets you reach your files from a phone or laptop without fiddling with port forwarding, which is a lifesaver for remote workers. In my own setup, I've used DSM to schedule nightly snapshots of a MySQL database and to mirror critical project folders to an offsite Synology Cloud Sync target. Those kinds of backup routines are usually the reason a small business will spend a few $100s more on a NAS rather than rely on external drives alone. On the flip side, there are a few practical weaknesses that surface after the first month of use. The first is noise. 6 spinning drives can get loud enough to be noticeable in an open office environment, especially when the drives spin up after a period of inactivity. Some users have installed the unit in a dedicated server rack or a closet to mitigate that, but that adds extra cabling and ventilation considerations. Second, the power draw is higher than a 2-bay model. Running at full load, the DS1621 Plus can pull around 35 watts, which translates into a noticeable addition to your electricity bill if the device stays on 24/7. For a home office that runs the NAS only a few hours a day, that's not a huge concern, but for a business that wants an always-on solution, it's worth budgeting for. Another point to consider is the upgrade path. While the memory is technically upgradable, you're limited to DDR4 SATA modules, and Synology only officially supports up to 32 GB on this model. If your future plans involve heavy virtualization or running many Docker containers, you might outgrow that ceiling faster than you expect. In that case, looking at a higher-end model like the DS1821 Plus, which supports 8GB slots, could be a smarter long-term investment. So who should buy the DS1621 Plus? If you're a small to medium-sized business with 310 users who need reliable file sharing,